We are back on MorningLine. It's our final segment this morning. We have Vanderbilt professor Dr. Maria Luisa Georgia. I got to get it right. Georgia. Thank you for coming on. Fascinating conversation this morning just about, the fires in the Amazon rainforest and how they continue to burn at this point. This is our final segment. I'm curious, do you believe that with some of the publicity we've seen over the last couple of weeks as this thing has made worldwide news, that there will be any change come the dry season next year, which, by the way, that's why the burning's happening right now. The dry season's underway, correct, right now?
So I said that there is no seasonality in the tropical forest. Right. It's not completely correct. There is a dry and a wet season, and in the dry season, which kind of starts in June and goes up to October, now it's extending to November because of the change in the climate. That's when the farmers use that period to burn the forest, because then there is no rain to stop the burning. That makes sense.
Right? I was wondering, because you think of the rainforest anyway, you always think green, 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 and trying to burn green vegetation is a rough thing. I don't even know. They start these fires with accelerants, you think, gasoline, stuff like that? Who knows?
I have no idea.
So they must do something. So they get it going, but they burn during the dry season.
But they have to cut the forest and let it dry.
I see. Okay, so they go in and cut it, then they burn it.
And then they cut it, let it dry, and then they burn it. And because it's the dry season, there is less rain, so it dries faster, and then of course it burns faster.
Okay,
right?
and then what they've done is they've cleared this, and it's going to be meadowland where they plant vegetation for cattle to eat.
Yes, or they plant soybeans and corn.
Okay, and that's a big exporter for Brazil?
It is. So U.S. is the biggest for both beef and soybeans, but I think Brazil is second or third.
See, that's where I think the U.S., and I don't know if President Trump takes notice or who else, or however that works, could take notice and say, look, we are going to continue buying your soybeans and cattle, but we want assurances from you that the burning stops.
Yeah.
And you basically, and that's where the cloud, it's the now you want to do it and you want to sustain it and you want to help them, but if all of a sudden the U.S. stopped buying Brazilian beef and soybeans, that'd be a big, big problem for that country.
It would, although I don't know how much. That's why I don't know how the U.S. as a government can help too much. It can help as just a general international pressure. But I think Europe and China are the big buyers.
Well, and we know yesterday the G7 just wrapped up, and the leaders there were discussing, European leaders, just how important it is for them too. France was talking about how the Brazil rainforest and how it affects. So they're all taking notice. Now I don't know about China, but they all could play a role in saying, look, we want to help subsidize these farmers, and we'll continue to buy your products, but we won't if you keep burning off rainforests.
Right,
and that'll get the farmers' attention.
Exactly, and the U.S., even if they're not the major importers of soybean and beef from Brazil, they definitely play a role if they say something to the Brazilian government.
Well, I'm not saying make threats, but say, hey, we buy your product, we want to work with this, but we want you to take steps to address this, or maybe we don't buy as much.
Right.
And let's see, we have a call actually from Rain. Good morning, Rain. What's on your mind?
Yeah, don't she think that a lot of this is foreign governments involved on it and foreign people, industry and stuff like that, that's looking to mine the land for coal and other minerals, oil and things like that, and they want it destroyed, and they're using the farmers also to set it on fire so that they can import soybeans and crops to China and to other countries around the world. It says on the internet that it's changed government over there, that the guy that's took over, and these governments want the land cleared so they can tax it and get more money in it. It's all about a dollar. It's not about saving the environment.
All right, you're exactly right on that front. And he may be right, too. You talked about how there's been a change in government. And we'll address the mining question in a moment. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe these other countries are like, well, we'll look the other way while you burn this if you sell us that beef and soybean for a better price, and all we care is the bottom line money. And you know as well as I do, that's usually where it comes down. What do you think, though?
In the past, that happened. I think when there was a peak of deforestation in the Amazon in the 2004, 2005, the international pressure made it change, because they said we're not buying beef from Brazil that comes from deforested Amazon.
Oh, they did do that at that point. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, and that changed the trajectory of, as well as the government willing to say, okay, let's pay more attention to it, right? I think the problem right now is we don't know how much this government wants to pay attention to international pressure,
right.
because they're really they have a different approach, and they think that we can do whatever we want in Brazil because this is our country, which is partly true. I don't completely agree with that. I think it is a country that is it's the fifth largest country in the world, so we have to pay attention to other parts of the world when we do anything in Brazil.
I agree. Now, as he mentioned, is there mining as an issue there?
Mining is an issue. I don't think the mining is the main issue right now, but it is. I mean, eventually, this is another thing that the government wants to invest on, is that let's find what is underneath this forest. And again, I think it's a bit of a misconception. I don't think you need to cut down the forest to a lot of the forest to do some mining, but I know less about the mining. I think the main pressure it still comes from the farming and cattle industry and the soybean industry in Brazil.
And your belief is that with this, the new president took power, how long ago was the change?
Not even a year ago.
Not even a year. So elected and has maybe a different agenda, which is, what do you think it is? More, we're just, beside just wanting to do what we do without other concerns, is it the economy, getting it going? Is that the problem? He's running and saying, look, we're poor. We need to get it going. We need to put more food on people's tables and more money in their pocket. And if that means doing these things that maybe harm the environment, we'll do it.
Right, and there is some belief that we can't really harm too much the environment. I think it's an obsolete idea that this president has, and he does not want to pay attention to what the evidence and the facts are in 2019, which are not the same as like 50 years ago.
But they elected him.
True, but because of other reasons. I think Brazilians were very disgusted by all the corruption that happened in Brazil, and he was unfortunately the alternative, which I did.
Do you still have Brazilian citizenship?
Yes.
Were you able to vote?
No, because I was here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you can vote by mailing.
Okay.
But yeah, some of the people, half of the country thought that that he will, or half that voted, right? So it's a.
When do you go back?
I go every year,
so
twice a year, summer
next?
and
have you already
winter.
been? Or
I just came back from Brazil. I was there June and July.
Did you see some of the burning at that point? Were you in any of the areas near that?
No, because I came right before August, so
just
end
before
of
the dry season.
Yes, when the dry season was starting. I mean, you see in the news that the government is dismantling all the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Science, all the protection for the indigenous people. So you clearly see that bad things will happen because they're in a trend of just dismantling the entire. There's agencies that have been working pretty hard and pretty well in Brazil. So Brazil has a lot of science going on and a lot of monitoring, surveillance and all of that, but it's just that got to be used for good use, right?
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, and politicians and who you elect can affect so much. Real quick as we wrap things up, in this country you see, especially out west, a lot of those wildfires, and now they're not deliberately set for clearing land, but is that different in your mind? I mean, that type of deforestation anywhere on the planet, and you're an ecologist, is pretty damaging, isn't it? I mean, you see some of the wildfires, they say, are naturally occurring. Lightning strikes and maybe the brush is built up and you have to have a burn to clear out some of the brush. Some of it's natural and normal, would you say?
In Brazil, no.
But not in Brazil?
No.
So it's different. The stuff here, when you see wildfires in California sometimes, different.
Yes, it's different. So it's man-made. I mean, it is true that wildfires, because the droughts are becoming more intense and longer and more frequent in Brazil, the natural fires may intensify, and they have been intensifying. But the majority of the fires that we're seeing is man-made. So people go there and set fire, cut the forest and set fire to the dead forest to clear cut the area and plant. So that can go almost to zero if there is some changing in
Right.
policy and fiscalization and fines and all of that.
Yeah, there's a good news in that. You can't control where a lightning strike's going to hit, all right,
Exactly.
obviously. But with something like this, if it's man-made, as you said, in Brazil, and then that's something that can be controlled.
Exactly. So it's up to us, right? So international pressure, internal pressure from Brazilians to the government, and the government changing its mind, or maybe we changing the government in 4 years.
And the people, if the people in Sao Paulo and the people in power see this, they don't like having dark rain fall.
No, I don't think so.
They see this and they're like, what the heck's going on? Now, part of that had to do with the fact that maybe the winds just blew a certain direction to get it.
Yeah, I'm not an expert there, but I think it has to do with, it was a bit of like a many things coming together, and the rain coming, the dark rain coming to Sao Paulo, which is in my experience in Brazil a first. I've never seen, I wasn't there, but I have never seen a dark rain in Sao Paulo.
Wow.
Related to so maybe now people that weren't certain about, well, what kind of damage that government can make to Brazil, maybe they're rethinking.
They'll see that.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully. That's my hope.
What's the term for a president?
4 years.
It's 4 years, just like in this country.
Yes.
So, and he was just elected. But who knows? Like I said, maybe the international pressure, and maybe it brings new things to Brazil.
Maybe,
if
maybe it does. So that's my hope, and we still have time to fix things. So it's not like, oh, there isn't anything to be done.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's controllable.
We still have 80% of the Amazon standing. So if we can stop now, there is a lot that can be taken from the Amazon without having to cut the forest. So that's the message there. It's not like, oh, we don't cut the forest, we don't get anything from it. It's not true. So there is a lot in the forest. From getting clean water, which is important for the farmers, right? Soil, quality of the soil, rain, and not as long as droughts as they are getting. So there's a lot that they can get from not cutting the forest, and that's important.
It should be a renewable resource is what it is. The whole idea of selective cutting as opposed to just clear cutting, even though I understand why the farmers have to clear cut. They can't cut every other tree because they need the meadow for the grass for the cows. But like the timber industry, I don't know if timber is involved in that too. When they cut the trees, they burn it, or is any of the timber cut and harvested for wood mills?
Well, timber is involved too. So there is a vicious cycle there that the timber industry, illegal, right?
Yeah.
Timber industry comes and cuts a lot of the big trees that are valuable, and then the farmers come later and cut the rest. So they all come together. So that needs to be better regulated as well. But even without cutting all the timber, there is a lot that we can get from the forest without having to cut, I'd say, almost anything.
Yeah. Would you recommend I visit the Amazon rainforest? Check it out.
Totally.
Go
Go to Manaus, get a boat up to the Amazon River. You'll see like a lot of monkeys, a lot of dolphins, river dolphins.
Wow, I'd love to do it.
A lot of big birds, macaws, and it's beautiful. My best. Do I have time to tell?
We have like 10 seconds.
Okay. No, but go. Go to the Amazon. It's the most beautiful experience ever.
Thank you, ma'am, for coming on. It's a great conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. It's an important subject.
I hope I helped.
You did. We'll take a break. I'll be back with a programming note about tomorrow right after this.
Excellent.
We'll hear your story.
You have allergy symptoms? Dust a lot? Have black lines at the edge of your carpet? New home construction? Visit MrBAirDuct.com for a free estimate.
It's only one way, and that's the right way, and that's the way we do it at Mr. B's Air Duct Cleaning.